Good afternoon. One of our primary motivations in setting up this YouTube channel was because we do see a lot of other YouTubers and read a lot of the analysis and the commentary of the Chinese economy from people who are outside China. And these analyses and reports do not comport with what we see with our own eyes every day and our own experience. A disclaimer up front, which is that we were here during the pandemic, all of it. And the pessimism during that time was completely warranted. The companies that survived through all that, it was a miracle, and many of them didn't. And it was during this time that many foreigners left, and they have not returned. So there are just far fewer people here to see what's happened since those days. The business chambers here estimate that the drop in foreigners living and working here in China is down by at least half, and probably by much more. And that's measured by membership in the American Chamber of Commerce here, or the European Chamber of Commerce, and by enrollment of foreign children in private schools. So if you were a foreigner living in China before and you've come back, you might conclude that the economic conditions are much worse than before, because the restaurants that you used to eat at and the private schools where your kids or your colleagues' kids went, those are probably gone. And so I would agree that on those metrics, it's very different now, and there probably is no recovery to speak of. Another disclaimer: doubts about whether the official reports are to be believed about economic activity, about GDP. I share them. So if you are skeptical about what governments say about their economic growth, I'm with you. And you don't need to send me an email about it. You are not more cynical than I am, I promise you. I only do know that the shopping malls here are busy again, and the restaurants are full again. The movies are doing good business here. My gym is full of people again, unfortunately. I mention these things, restaurants and malls and gyms and movies, because this is all disposable income. If a lot of people are shopping in supermarkets and grocery stores, buying food, it doesn't tell you very much. But if they're at Starbucks and they're going to the gym, that says something else. And they are at Starbucks, let me tell you. And I have to take turns when I go to the gym with 3 other guys to use the leg press machine. And good luck if you want to use the elliptical or the treadmill anytime after 4 o'clock. I can tell you that too. And these things were not true a year ago. McKinsey put out this report, and we're going to go through some of their data points because their information does square with our day-to-day experiences here. Now, their data here are only through the first 2 months of 2024, January and February. So these will be compared to January and February of 2023. So we're looking at 2 periods that were after the pandemic lockdowns. The savings rate in China is still off the charts and was almost 32% in 2023. That's full year 2023, not just January, February. Their total new savings was 56 trillion RMB. That's about 8 trillion US dollars. And that is much more than what the Chinese spent at retail stores. This is a cultural phenomenon here that it just runs very, very deep. The Chinese people I know, they save first and then spend, instead of how most of us tend to do things, which is the other way around. But that's the number, 32%. And we might have expected that to drop a lot after the pandemic ended and they were able to go out and spend, but they're still saving first. FDI is interesting, and that's next. There are reports about how foreign direct investment is way down. But McKinsey puts that into perspective here a bit. Even with the decline, it's the 3rd highest on record, coming off highs in 2021 and 2022. Next up is restaurants. Food service sales up 12.5%. Hospitality sectors are hotels, resorts, and restaurants. And a 12% number year on year is a really big jump, and it explains why it's harder to get a good table. Air travel up 44%. Huge number. Astounding is how McKinsey puts it. That fuels hospitality spending too, obviously. The domestic airports are busier now than they were pre-pandemic, and the high-speed train stations are as crowded as we can remember too. So there is a lot of domestic travel. And international is heading a lot higher too. On this chart here, the line at 100, that is the pre-pandemic levels of travel. So domestic travel, travel inside China, they are already there, up like, looks like 18% or so over pre-COVID levels. Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau is about 90% or so compared to before, and international just under 80%. According to this paragraph here, while the number of outbound Chinese is still way down, they're spending much more per person, and it's much higher now than in 2019. To Europe, Italy and France up around 15 to 20 or so. For Asia, per travel spending to Japan more than doubled, and up big in Singapore too. There are 20% fewer Chinese traveling abroad now, but they're spending more money on average. The McKinsey report is free to access, and it includes a lot of other spending too: cars, electric vehicles, housing, incomes. But we wanted to focus today on purely discretionary spending: travel, domestic and international, restaurants, retail, because we can see for ourselves what's actually happening. Have a good night. Be good.
And all these things will be added to you. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. Everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, it will be open.